Hello and welcome. Nursing News You Can Use at 5. I'm Tina Baxter, your host. Today is May the 24th, 2024. And I do apologize. We are running a little bit late. And also, we had some technical difficulties coming in first. With, as you know, Meta is having some issues. And so we've been having some issues getting on. So I wanted to thank those of you that are watching on our YouTube channel and for being patient with us. And I just wanted to say that we're running a little bit late today for our show because we had the opportunity to be out in the community where I love to be. And we were just celebrating with Primrose. Primrose just rebranded and relaunched their Silver Lace dementia unit. Very lovely facility. I happen to have a chance to offer a welcome to them and a congratulations to them in person, and also to enjoy and have a tour of the great facility. So if you haven't seen it, they do have an open house that are still going on till 6 o'clock tonight. So once we hop off here, go ahead and head on over or stop over and just thank Primrose for what they're doing in the community, because it was a very lovely, lovely event. So appreciate that. So I want to go ahead and get started on our affirmation for today. I am learning to receive from the vast abundance of the universe by acknowledging my self-worth. I am learning to receive from the vast abundance of the universe by acknowledging my self-worth. This is again from the Louise Hay calendar for 2024. All right, we do have some news to get into today, so I do want to make sure that we get into the news. Our first story is coming from Politico, and it says FTC poised to shake up healthcare. The Federal Trade Commission is expected to vote tomorrow, issuing a rule that will prevent employers, including in the healthcare sector, from enforcing most non-compete agreements. The FTC has argued that such clauses stifle wages and innovation by making it harder for workers to change jobs and to bring new ideas to other companies. The commission proposed a ban in January of 2023 and received more than 2,600 comments from the public. The FTC chair, Lena Khan, has said freedom to change jobs is key to, quote, economic liberty and a competitive, thriving community. Aaron C. Fuse Brown, director of the Center for Law, Health, and Society at Georgia State University, told Pulse that banning such agreements would have far-reaching consequences because most doctors don't operate their own practices or are employed by other groups. The FTC's ban on non-compete would loosen the grip that corporate employers have on their physicians, she said. And so may I point out that a lot of physicians don't have their own practices any longer, and part of that is because they've been pushed out of the marketplace, swallowed up by regulations and the high overhead costs, and private equity has come in and bought up the practices. So that is very correct. And then if you enter into these non-compete clauses, they can have such egregious things to say, such as you can't work for any other practice for a period of 1 to 3 years within a 50-mile radius. Well, a lot of times physicians live in the communities in which they practice. So that means that you have to move or go to a different location somewhere. They have to uproot their entire family in order just to have a job. And so that's where some of these things are happening. It's not just physicians, nurse practitioners, even some nurses have non-compete clauses. So these are things that we should really be paying attention to as nurses. John Kerr, a partner in the Antitrust and Competition Practice Group at Shepherd Mullen, said the most significant impact would be on the valuation of physician group transactions. So, of course, hospitals have fought the proposal and are pushing for an exemption. The American Hospital Association has argued that the FTC doesn't have the authority to propose such a ban and has said that doctors and senior executives, at the very least, should be excluded. Of course, they would make that argument. And in fact, there's actual pending litigation. We reported on this a few weeks ago, pending litigation from a physician in Fort Wayne about this very thing. And so we're going to keep an eye on what's happening with this. The American Medical Association's House of Delegates voted to oppose non-competes for doctors at for-profit and nonprofit hospitals, hospital systems, or who are employed by staffing firms. The AMA has noted that some doctors who are employers and own physician practices may support, quote, reasonable non-competes, while employed physicians might support banning the clauses. Many doctors have argued that ending non-compete would benefit patients and help balance the power between doctors and the powerful interest behind hospitals and large physician practices. So we'll see what happens. I don't think they've come out with a final rule, but I will be helping to keep an eye on what's happening with that. So as soon as I find out, I'll let you know. In other news, there is now a mental health parity ad campaign. The URSA Industry Committee, which represents large employers' benefit interests, is launching a six-figure ad campaign today, slamming the Biden administration's mental health parity proposal. The proposal would make insurers comply with a federal law requiring them to provide mental health care on the same terms as other care. It's not clear when the administration might finalize its plan. The campaign on cable TV, streaming services, and digital platforms will point to healthcare workforce shortages and argue that the proposed rule would make mental health care access worse by adding more red tape. The proposed changes could have unintentional yet catastrophic impacts on the progress that has already been made, says Melissa Bartlett, ERC's Senior Vice President of Health Policy, said in a statement. So I can say this. I remember when mental health parity was a really big hot topic here in Indiana. And I'm so glad that they added it. I think that mental health care is physical health care. And as a person who works in mental health, I'm just going to say we need to be paying attention to that and taking care of that. If we took care of some of these mental health care needs, maybe we wouldn't need so much, on the physical health. And I think if we had a chance for people to get in, be seen, for those who practice in mental health to be reimbursed like they should. I shouldn't have to fight with the insurance companies to get people the necessary medications that they need, given that we provide the documentation. So if someone who is very ill needs to be on two antipsychotic medications, they should have access to that. And I shouldn't have to fight repeatedly and talk to people who often aren't in mental health care, who are making these decisions at all, and maybe not understand the dire need that the patient has. And so I am going to advocate for mental health parity because I think it is part of physical health. And if you're going to pay for other things, just should be part of it. We shouldn't neglect mental health care. And I think that's why we're in such a poor shape as we are in this country. So I'm going to leave that there and hop off my soapbox here, and I'm going to get on to the next story. So this is more updates from the cyber attack, if you remember from Change Healthcare and the cyber attack. This story came from WSJ.com. So here we go. Hackers broke into Change Healthcare systems days before the cyber attack. So this is from WSJ. Okay. So the hackers who attacked United Healthcare's Change Healthcare unit were in the company's networks for more than a week before they launched a ransomware strike that crippled vital parts of the U.S. healthcare system since February. The attackers, who represented themselves as ALPHV or ALPHV ransomware gang or one of its affiliates, gained entry into Change's network on February the 12th, a person familiar with the cyber investigation said. They used compromised credentials on an application that allows staff to remotely access systems, the person said. The cyber attack on Change, which operates the largest U.S. clearinghouse for medical payments in the U.S., sent healthcare providers scrambling to find ways to bill insurers in the weeks and months following the February 21st attack. Change's parent insurer, United Healthcare Group, eventually paid a ransom to the attackers, the person said, declining to say how much or if the company has paid a second ransom since another group of hackers began leaking data in recent days. Wired magazine reported on March 4th that United Healthcare likely paid around $22 million in Bitcoin to the attackers, citing darknet forum posts and analysis of public blockchain. Between February 12th and when the ransomware was detonated on February the 21st, the hackers were moving laterally within Change's network, the person said. The length of time the hackers were in the network suggests they might have been able to steal significant amounts of data from Change's systems. Change processes about 15 billion transactions a year and touches on 1 in 3 medical records. Okay, that's scary. It shut down more than 100 of its systems in the wake of the attack, and the effect of that outage have left many smaller providers reliant on loans and personal funds to stay afloat while they are unable to take in revenue. Some have contemplated closing. United Healthcare said last week that the attack has so far costed $870 million. The company has been steadily restoring programs or systems since March, including its pharmacy software, claims management, and other platforms. It has also launched financial assistance programs, although some providers have complained of low amounts offered. Some providers have said that they have been pressured by United Health staff to make positive public comments about the loans. Lawmakers have raised questions about the cyber risks associated with a handful of healthcare companies holding dominant positions. The United States Department of Health and Human Services has also launched a probe into the potential compromise of sensitive patient information. United Health said it still is investigating the extent of the stolen data and what it contains. United Health Chief Executive Andrew Whitty is expected to testify about the attack. Okay, so that's something to know. There's a lot more that's coming out, and as things come out about this attack, I'm going to continue to inform you, particularly those of us with practices and businesses that are reliant on getting reimbursed. These are some things that you probably would want to know. Here's our next story. Knoxville Nursing Facility overcharged more than $250,000 to residents, reports show. So this is a way for us. I bring this out for consumers and for those that are in our network of nurses to know to look out for such things. You've got family members too. So this is coming out of Knoxville, Tennessee, from WVLT. So a Knoxville nursing home facility owes former residents, the representatives, and the state of Tennessee more than $250,000 in overcharges, according to an investigation from the Tennessee Comptroller's Office. The facility, Creekview Health and Rehabilitation, reported, quote, failed to manage and promptly refund accounts for 81 residents, totaling $265,671.42. The office said the errors came about mostly because Creekview did not properly log expenses, something the center claims to have addressed. The investigation covered January 1st of 2022 through November 21st of 2023. During that time, the office said management did not notify account holders about refunded credits the facility owed them. Of the total owed, $1,226,817.26 is owed to former Medicaid residents, and $1,384 and 103 I can't say it now. $138,854.16. There we go. Is owed back to the Medicaid program. So that's actually a lot of money right there. Additionally, the investigation found that Creekview had charged 6 residents a total of $260 for haircuts, which are covered under Medicaid. The facility was also asked to refund that money. So we'll see what happens. But again, this is where, do your due diligence. It's the fact that they didn't have their systems in place. And this is why I say, please get your systems in place so that you don't have these things happen. This is a big story. This is I heard about this first on Instagram. Thank you, Nurse Erica, for turning me on to this. She first talked about this on Instagram, and I saw it. And so I looked it up, and it was reported by nurse.org. And it's Kentucky grants criminal immunity to healthcare workers for medical mistakes. I am just pleased as punch with this one. And I hope, Indiana, that you are listening. Kentucky has passed a groundbreaking new law that grants criminal immunity to healthcare providers for unintentional medical errors. House Bill 159, which received unanimous support from both the Kentucky House and Senate, shields nurses, doctors, and other medical staff from facing criminal charges for mistakes made in good faith as they navigate complex patient care situations. The bill was signed by Governor Bashir on March 26 of 2024. The bill has received widespread support from nursing organizations and advocacy groups who argue that the fear of criminal charges has been a deterrent for many considering a career in healthcare. And we've talked about this on the show before, where given the current climate, I probably would have second thoughts about being in healthcare if, and that's what I say. There is the Redonda vault issue scared a lot of us. And it's not just stopping with her. I've seen other nurses that are now facing criminal charges for things that really shouldn't be criminally charged. But anyway, I digress. So it says, by providing legal protection, the bill could make the profession more appealing and help address staffing shortages. The Kentucky Nurses Association press release congratulated nurses on getting the bill signed. Thank you for the calls, texts, and emails you sent both representatives and senators to get this bill through the system and ready to become a Kentucky law. This bill, HB 159, will prevent healthcare professionals from being charged criminally for making a medical error that makes it good for nurses and nursing and puts Kentucky at the forefront of developing laws to protect healthcare workers. You were an advocate for nurses and nursing issues, and you made the difference. Thank you. So I also want to congratulate the Kentucky nurses, and they are definitely nurses making a difference. So definitely congratulations to them. So I do want to say that while the bill grants immunity for unintentional errors, it does not provide a blanket protection for healthcare workers. So gross negligence, willful misconduct, and intentional harm are still subject to criminal charges. So things like the Lucy Ledbetter thing, you're not going to get away with that kind of stuff, right? That's different. Additionally, the bill does not impact civil liability, so you still can be sued civilly, meaning patients can still pursue legal action for medical malpractice. As Kentucky takes this bold step, the nation will be watching closely to gauge the impact of this groundbreaking legislation on the healthcare industry and the well-being of both providers and patients. And I think that is wonderful. And you know what? Indiana and Ohio definitely need something similar. All right. Let's get on to our next story and then we'll take a brief break. This is coming from the Santa Fe New Mexican. Nexus Christus St. Vincent's discord reignites after hospital revokes doctors' privileges. Several doctors at a Santa Fe practice are up in arms after learning Christus St. Vincent Regional Medical Center leaders revoked their hospital privileges last month, a move the group's president described as anti-competitive. So this kind of ties into the earlier story where we talked about the FTC investigating non-compete clauses. This is part of that same issue. So here we go. 2 orthopedic and 3 pain specialists at Nexus Health received notices of the change in mid-March, says Nexus Health President Herbert. According to 2 letters provided to the New Mexican, the change was referred to as administrative in nature. The letters told providers orthopedic and pain medicine service lines were closing as part of an effort to more fully integrate these services with the hospital and clinical leadership direction and oversight. In other words, according to an email from Christus St. Vincent spokesman Arturo Delgado, the hospital has chosen to make those services exclusive to employed or contracted providers. To have a closed or exclusive service means that only those providers that are employed or under contract with the hospital can provide services in the hospital. Hospital leaders declined requests for an interview, but in several rounds of answers to questions via email, defended the decision and pushed back on Herbert's complaint. So the practice had been a long-term partner of Christus St. Vincent's. Through the acrimonious split, the groups have sparred over contracts, provider poaching, and patient care. So again, that comes back to that non-compete stuff that was happening. Christus St. Vincent president and CEO Lillian Montoya wrote, exclusive service lines are a common practice at hospitals across the country. Every hospital in the country has exclusive arrangements for service lines and follows a similar process for identifying the hospital's needs and informing the providers. But Herbert told the New Mexican it's extremely rare for a hospital to revoke a provider's hospital privilege. An agreement, he said, is typically viewed as sacrosanct. We were completely blindsided by this decision. All of our physicians have up-to-date privileges at Christus. They were not under review, and we had consistently said to everyone we had planned to continue using them. Herbert and four of the affected physicians, Dr. John Garcia, Dr. Melissa Covington, Dr. Luke Belfuis, and Dr. Robin Hermes, have asked Christus leaders to reconsider the decision and restore their privileges. Herbert said if the request isn't granted, the providers will explore other options. There are legal remedies to this that I don't think anybody wants to test, he said. So while Nexus is a relatively new practice, bad blood with Christus St. Vincent's has been part of its story since the outset. So here's some of the backstory. The independent multi-specialty outpatient practice evolved out of a long-time Christus St. Vincent's contractor, previously called New Mexico Cancer Care Associates, in the wake of the hospital's 2022 decision to cancel a contract with the oncology provider and move Cancer Care Associates at the time said left thousands of patients uncertain of how their treatment would go forward. So the hospital decided to terminate their care or their contract, so then now patients are kind of left in the limbo. It wasn't a smooth divorce. Christus St. Vincent at one point accused the oncology group of breaching its contract by engaging in discussions about joining Nexus and by trying to poach Christus St. Vincent's providers. Just months after the bitter parting with its former cancer treatment contractor, Christus St. Vincent broke ground on its own cancer center, an $800 million project at its St. Michael's Drive campus. Today, Nexus Health has about 37 providers representing more than a dozen specialties, including orthopedics and pain management, dermatology, physical therapy, and primary care. Herbert said that about 80% of Nexus providers either worked directly for Christus St. Vincent at one point or had a contractual agreement with the hospital. Some of those specialties, including orthopedics and pain management, overlap with services Christus St. Vincent's also offers. So there's part of the dust up there. Hospital privileges give physicians who are employees the ability to admit patients to a facility and treat them there. For the patients of affected Nexus providers who need a procedure at the hospital, Herbert said Presbyterian Santa Fe Medical Center is still an option, but with an asterisk. The problem with that is that the two facilities are not equal, he said, adding the smaller scale of Presbyterian Santa Fe Hospital means some procedures can't be done there. For example, if a relatively healthy person needs a hip replaced by one of Nexus orthopedic doctors, that's not a problem to do it at Presbyterian. But if you need a hip replacement and you're older or you have, say, heart disease or lung disease and there's a chance that the surgery is riskier, then you're not going to get that done at Presbyterian Santa Fe. In that scenario, the patient would need to find a new provider, as Nexus Health physicians don't have privileges at Albuquerque hospitals either. For Nexus patients who do seek care at Christus St. Vincent's, Herbert contends that revocation could create an information void. For example, a situation could arise in which a patient who underwent surgery for a sports injury with a Nexus doctor could end up at Christus St. Vincent Regional Medical Center with a fever. You don't know if it's a post-operative infection. You don't know if it's a complication from the surgery, Herbert said. The doctors in the hospital have no insight to what's happening to you out there. They're going to take care of this patient starting completely from scratch and then with no communication with the patient's primary doctor. So it goes on to say that Montoya defended the decision as common practice and wrote in her email that hospital's local board made the call based on a desire to control quality, including when expanding services throughout the region. In a state where medical malpractice and liability are significant and growing concern, this board decision also considered the importance of aligning hospital employed and contracted physicians in its clinical quality and patient safety objectives. This is but one way we can ensure our care goals and greater protection for our physicians and our clinical practices. So Herbert said some of the biggest medical system problems in Santa Fe include long wait times, difficulty finding a doctor, and poor communication among providers. In what universe is limiting access to providers the solution to these three problems? It makes no sense. Herbert believes that the decision was driven by more business reasons than clinical reasons. It feels anti competitive, he said. This sets an amazingly dangerous precedent for this community. The message they're sending is if you don't work for us, you can't practice at this facility. So we'll see what happens. There's more to this story. Please feel free to go over and look at it, but we'll keep an eye on what's happening. Let's go ahead and take a brief break, and then we'll get on to our next story. Tired of feeling trapped in a job that no longer fulfills you? Is your nursing job no longer the fun-filled adventure you imagined? Find your passion again through nurse entrepreneurship. Step out into the light and come feel the sun. Join the Nurse Shark Academy today at thenurssharkacademy.biz and come feel the sun. All right, let's get into our next story. Nurses gather at Kaiser SF to protest AI in healthcare. So this is from NBC Bay Area, so this is San Francisco. Nurses are lining the streets outside of San Francisco Hospital Monday morning, protesting the use of artificial intelligence in healthcare. Members of the California Nurses Association were gathering outside Kaiser San Francisco, saying the hospital industry is rushing to implement what they call untested and unregulated technology. Kaiser says that the new tools can save lives. On its website, the company references a monitoring system that can prevent emergencies before they happen. The program automatically analyzes hospital patients' electronic health data and can alert medical staff if a patient is at risk of a serious decline. Nurses argue technology can't detect other patients' needs. No computer, no AI can replace a human touch, said Amy Grewal, a registered nurse. It cannot hold your loved one's hand. You cannot teach a computer how to have empathy. Some AI experts argue the new technology can help doctors develop better treatments by making it easy to access things like patient data or information on new drugs. Kaiser released the following statement on Monday in response to the nurses' actions. Kaiser Permanente is empowering nurses with state-of-the-art tools and technologies that support our mission of providing high-quality, affordable health care to best meet our members' and patients' needs. We have consistently invested in and embraced technology that enables nurses to work more effectively, resulting in improved patient outcomes and nurse satisfaction, and we will continue to do so. At Kaiser Permanente, artificial intelligence, AI tools don't make medical decisions. Our physicians and care team are always at the center of the decision-making with our patients. We believe that AI may be able to help our physicians and employees and enhance our members' experience. As an organization dedicated to, and I'm sorry, the rest of it did not print off, and it says, so it's not designed to then replace human assessment. Can I just say this? As I'm thinking about use of AI, what's going to happen when you punch in the data for their medical record and it says, okay, this person is at risk of XYZ, so your course of action should be A, right? But it doesn't see the other factors that might be in there. Patient, may not want that certain treatment. Maybe the patient makes a different decision. Maybe there's some information that comes out, afterwards, the assessment's done. I'm just worried that it will bog you down into trying to prove to the AI system that the person needs a treatment and a course of care. And I know that they're saying, oh, no, it'd never do that. But we already have problems with AI looking at medical records and determining whether or not a person should get this medication. So it automatically will spit out a refusal for the medication because it looks at, oh, well, they're 66 now, and so now they shouldn't be on their antipsychotic medication. And so we already have some of this happening. There's been studies talking about this. And so my concern is it's going to further bog down the clinicians that have to prove to somebody that says this is the right course of treatment and action at the time. And I can see this happening if we aren't careful with this. And so this could be a useful tool, possibly. But it's something that should be a tool. It shouldn't be the answer. And unfortunately, The people that run the show have the money, the bean counters. They're going to be relying on that. Well, according to the algorithm, you should have this. We saw that kind of with the Affordable Care Act, where people were kind of pigeonholed into, well, you should really be able to get out of the hospital and get out of rehab in a couple weeks for that knee replacement. So, doesn't matter if you may have other comorbidities and you need to have a little bit more therapy. We got to bend over backwards and jump through so many hoops to get you additional time because it says you should be out in 2 weeks. And so I see this as potentially actually limiting treatment options and care if we are not careful. So I do want to take some time to really think about how we can effectively, intelligently, and intentionally use AI and not just throw it as a blanket in there, and certainly not to replace nurses at the bedside who you will need. All right, here's our next story. From the Texas Tribune, it says Texas families could lose at-home nursing under stricter Medicaid rule. As Kamika Sales returns home from work, her son's nurse completes his evening routine, giving him his last medications, connecting him to his ventilation machine. After the nurse leaves, Sales and her son gather on the couch, giggling together as he uses his iPad or plays with blocks. A stricter rule from Texas Human Services Agency might make their bedtime ritual impossible. Her 16-year-old son could no longer receive nursing, therefore taking away his ability to live at home. She says it's awful because the whole goal is to keep him at home. A proposed change from the state's Health and Human Services Commission would not allow an adult to be away from the home for any period of time whenever a nurse is providing services. So this makes me wonder why, because isn't the presence of the nurse also to provide respite for the caregiver? So that's just one of those questions that I have. So it says Medicaid offers Niels more than 150 hours of private duty nursing per week, the type of care that the proposal would affect. Private duty nursing allows for more continuous services for medically complex children, and for Sales, it's made it possible for her to work outside the home as an x-ray technician and even work overtime to afford his out-of-pocket medical expenses. If the rule change becomes official, Sales would have few options: to pay for an extra caregiver to stay home while she works, which she can't afford, to put her child in an institution like a skilled nursing home, or to quit her job and stay at home with the nurse at all times. Neil, who has a congenital heart defect, is paraplegic, and has undergone chemotherapy for cancer, needs constant care. She says, if I don't work, then there's no roof. I don't have a backup plan or support system because I am the backup plan and the support system, and she's a single mom. Even parents who work from home fear the change could impact their ability to leave the house for any reason, such as buying groceries, going to the doctor's appointments, or running errands. And so, yeah, that makes sense. I don't know why they want to make this change. Thousands of families could face these crossroads if the rule change became official. More than 7,000 individuals received private duty nursing in 2022, according to the state, though that may include some adults who receive services through other specialized healthcare programs. When asked what spurred the HHSH to propose the rule change, spokesperson Jennifer Ruffcorn said in a statement that they were clarifying the existing private duty nursing rules and policy. According to the agency, this is how they've always interpreted the policy. Because of this, HHSC is not setting new or different expectations about how this policy is monitored or reported. But advocates say the formalized proposal could create confusion for nursing provider companies and affect families' eligibility for their services. Jayreen Williams, a 16-year-old daughter, can't use the bathroom on her own. She has a neurogenic bladder, colonic dysmotility, and fecal impaction. So a nurse spends hours at their house helping with her catheter and bowel program. Sometimes the entire process can take 4 or 5 hours. Williams works from home and has her own disability. But under the rule change, she would have to bring her daughter and her daughter's nurse to doctor's appointments with her. If mom has to go somewhere and I'm in the middle of doing all this, I personally wouldn't be able to leave my patient and then follow mom around. Ife Ozo, the private duty nurse for Williams' daughter, said, I can't do that. My patient comes first. Some advocates have argued the rule change wouldn't just harm patients and their families, it also denigrates nurses by equating the medical care they provide with child care or suggesting another adult needs to be with the nurse at all times. I really don't want anyone hovering over me to watch what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. I went to school for it. It would make me feel like, okay, don't you trust me? Ozo said she doesn't have time during her shift to do anything non-medical for Williams' daughter, regardless of whether or not Williams is home. Jessie Sage Chang, a registered nurse and consultant, has a daughter with multiple disabilities, including cerebral palsy. But she can't care for her own daughter because of her work, and she needs someone else to monitor her daughter's medical needs. One of the pillars of nursing is autonomy. It is being able to make autonomous decisions that are in the best interest of the patient. If you make somebody else responsible for what the nurse is doing, you've just stripped them of their autonomy. Sage Chen says it's not fair to call nursing care child care just because a parent is away. The need for someone to watch your child who has medical complexities is inextricably linked to the level of care they need, and so you can't separate it out. You can't say that a child receiving PDN is just to be taken care of like a babysitter would because a babysitter couldn't take care of that child. It is unequivocally denying the reality of the level of care that the child needs. The rule draft has befuddled advocates because it's not clear why the change is necessary and because the concept has been introduced before and received public rancor. So I would say that if you are in Texas, this is a good time, nurses and those families that are affected by this, speak up. You need to call them. You need to send them letters. You need to fill their inbox and their email. Send so many emails, maybe it'll shut the system down temporarily so they'll take notice. You need to talk to your legislator and make sure that you guys stand up for your rights in this one. All right, there's more to that story. Feel free to check that out. So those of you in Texas, pay attention. All right, and so this is coming from, I believe it's Politico. No, this AP Press. AP. The pandemic exposed staffing shortage at nursing homes. A new White House push aims for a remedy. This is about the ruling, again, for the staffing ratios. And so Monday, Vice President Kamala Harris on Monday said the first rule to set minimum staffing levels at federally funded nursing homes and require that a certain portion of the taxpayer dollars that they receive go towards wages for care workers is a long overdue milestone that recognizes their value to society. Harris announced the rules in Washington before she flew to La Crosse, Wisconsin to meet with nursing home care employees. In the battleground state, the Democratic vice president also held a campaign event focused on abortion rights. She says, it is about time that we start to recognize your value and pay you accordingly and give you the structure and support that you deserve. Harris told a small group of care workers. The federal government is for the first time requiring nursing homes to have a minimum staffing levels after COVID-19 pandemic exposed grim realities and poorly staffed facilities. The change will mean more staff at these facilities, fewer emergency room visits for residents, and peace of mind for caregivers who will be able to spend more time with their patients, Harris said. The vice president said that the Medicaid, federal state health insurance program for lower income people pays about $125 billion annually to home health care companies, which were not required to report on how they were spending the money. A second ruling being finalized Monday will require that 80% of the money being used to pay workers instead of administrative or overhead costs. So we'll keep an eye on what that all means and how it plays out and when it will actually go into effect. Here's our next story. This is coming out of Maine. And it's from the Maine Monitor, and it says use of antipsychotics in Maine nursing homes climb. Sherry Parker, Assistant Director of Nursing at Caribou Rehab and Nursing, recalled a woman who came to her facility and was so sedated by the prescribed antipsychotic medications she had been taking at home that they couldn't keep her awake for therapy because she'd fall asleep in front of you. Parker, who handles gradual dose reductions at the nursing home, says she worked with a doctor to wean the woman off the medication. By the time the resident transferred back to home 2 months later, she was a completely different woman, Parker said, able to eat on her own and be at home alone while her husband went to work. She says, I've seen a stopped antipsychotic medication on many people, and sometimes I'm like, wow, they've actually done really well. That just goes to show me that it wasn't really necessary to keep them on them. But in recent years, she says she's seen an increase in these medications. At the end of last year, while reading referrals from the hospital for new residents, Parker said nearly everyone had a prescription for an antipsychotic medication. She said it's likely that they were prescribed the medication while living at home or when they went to the hospital before ending up at her nursing home. Statewide data shows that the percentage of Maine nursing home residents receiving antipsychotic medication is increasing. While the rate for short stay residents, like the one Parker recalled, is relatively low, Maine's rate for long stay residents is higher than the national average. Short stay residents are in a nursing home for less than 100 days, often recovering from surgery or being discharged from a hospital. In the years after federal regulators cracked down on rates of antipsychotic medication given to long stay nursing home residents, Maine became a success story, dramatically reducing its rate between 2011 and 2017 from 27% to 17%. But since then, Maine's rate has crept back to 20% higher than the national average of 14.7% and the sixth highest across all the states, according to the U.S. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Among all American adults, the rate of antipsychotics was less than 2%. Antipsychotics are a type of medication, including risperidone and Seroquel, designed to manage psychosis and delusions. They're often given to patients with a diagnosis of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. The side effects can be severe, including tremors, heart and circulatory problems, high cholesterol, and sedation. They can be particularly problematic for older adults, even potentially shortening the lives of nursing home residents by increasing the risk of drowsiness, confusion, and falling, said several experts. CMS data on nursing home rates of antipsychotics exclude people diagnosed with schizophrenia, Tourette syndrome, or Huntington's disease. Antipsychotic medications are especially dangerous among the nursing home population because of their potentially devastating side effects, including death, and the use of antipsychotic medications among nursing home residents is an indicator of nursing home quality, says CMS spokesperson told the Maine Monitor. Well, yes and no. Again, those that have documented mental illness, taking them off their medication can even be more devastating than keeping them on their medication. You have to weigh the risk and the benefits. However, I will say I do agree that the overuse of these medications in older adults has been problematic. And a lot of times it's given because of behaviors. And so it takes an experienced clinician to determine whether or not the medications are indicated. So Dr. Susan Worry, Associate Clinical Professor at the University of New England in Bideford, and a board-certified geriatric psychiatrist, said there are times when antipsychotic medications are necessary to prevent a resident from harming themselves or others, but those occasions are rare, which is true. Or in the management of their symptoms. Maybe they've been bipolar for a very long time. I mean, I had a resident, she was bipolar. She was managed on a very, very low dose of an antipsychotic. We're like, she don't need that anymore. She's 90-some years old. Took her off her medicine. Woo! No, did not work. She immediately became manic, started acting out, trying to escape, hitting people. Put her back on her meds. She was fine. So again, you need to know the resident. So it's not a cookie cutter, one size fits all. So Dr. Weary goes on to say, I understand an acute need for using a chemical restraint, but call it what it is. This is not treating a behavior. This is treating an episode of agitation that you can't figure out how to address another way. You're basically sedating the person. Weary said it is often depicted as challenging behaviors from residents with dementia is actually the resident trying to communicate an unmet need. They may not have had the language to say what they want, so rather than sedating the resident, it's important to find out the cause of their frustration, which I agree with and very true. Parker with Caribou Rehab and Nursing says she's seen residents come off these medications and become more alert, social, and talkative. And sometimes there's no change in behavior, which she says begs the question why the resident needed to be on the medication in the first place. So again, you can't blanketly say never ever use those medications because there are legitimate needs for them. However, I have definitely seen the overuse of them. And if you're not familiar with using those type of medications, I would say use them very cautiously. Okay, all right, let's move on to our last story. And this comes from The Hill. And it says, White House moves to protect patient abortion records. And right now they are arguing some of this. There's some things that have come out. I'm just listening to the news about, in particular, I can't remember the state now. I want to say Idaho, but there's confusion about whether or not, as a provider, you are able to provide an abortion in a medical emergency where the life of the mother is in danger. So there's questions of whether mothers have to carry around, dead fetuses and have to let nature take its course with them. And so whether or not you have to wait for something catastrophic to happen before you can tend to them. So there's a lot into that. So I encourage you to really understand. The Supreme Court is talking about it now. So tune into that if you haven't been watching that. But I've been listening to that and the arguments there. So just listen, because there are some real big concerns about women being denied medical care. And I don't think that the rule change was intended to do that. And it's kind of interesting to hear some of the arguments from the justices and the session that I was listening to just before I came on. They were really saying that it's come down even to gender lines where the female justices were asking the hard questions that some of the male justices were just kind of like glossing over some things. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, let's get into this story. So it says, the rule issued by the HHS, Office for Civil Rights, or the OCR, prohibits providers, clearinghouses, and their business associates, regulated by the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA, from disclosing a patient's protected health information to facilitate an investigation or impose liability by law enforcement. Each and every American still has a right to privacy, especially when it comes to their very private, very personal health information. Please make no mistake, when you access care, when you go see a doctor, when you enter a hospital, when you see a medical professional, and you provide, because you're required or you're requested, very personal health information, that information is entitled to protections under federal law, perhaps even state law. But under federal law, you have rights to your privacy. That's what today is about, he said. So this is from HHS Secretary Xavier Becerra. OCR Director Melanie Fontes Rayner said this rule applies in states where the reproductive health care service is in question is legal. She added the rule is meant to aid women who travel out of state to receive reproductive health care services such as abortions, both surgical and medical. Both the out-of-state provider and the patient's in-state provider who did not provide the reproductive health services but may have these records will be protected under this rule and can refuse to disclose the information, which I think is very important, because in Texas, they were saying stuff like, you need to report them and all this stuff and prosecute them. And I'm like, whoa. When do we start really dictating what people do? That should be between the person and their provider. It should not. No, we shouldn't be doing stuff like that. That's my opinion. But anyway, so this is saying that you can keep that information private. So it says, if a person travels out of state to receive care that is not legal in their home state, the final rule includes a presumption for providers that services that patients received out of state were legal. Under HIPAA, providers are prohibited from sharing protected health information in response to a subpoena unless certain conditions are first satisfied. So here's the question. What are the conditions? Noting the limitations of the rule, as it does not apply in states where abortions are banned, but Sarah said, we have no illusion that everything that the president has urged us to do with our authorities is going to undo Dobbs. If your privacy can be violated simply by trying to exercise the health care you need or your medical professional tells you you need, that puts at risk whether you feel comfortable getting that health care. That is like a chapter in 1984 that is Orwellian as it gets. So we'll see what happens with this story. We'll continue to watch and see how it goes. So that puts in our last story for today. That includes all of our news for today. I do want to talk about our upcoming challenge that will be the Nurses Week, the Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. You'll be hearing more about that. Please hop into our challenge. I encourage you. We're going to talk about um, bringing kingdom principles to nursing care. What I've seen so much in social media, and I'm going to talk about it. You know what? I'm going to talk about it. Here's what I've seen. So we have one nurse influencer that is talking about things that happen behind the scenes in the hospital, standing up for your rights, and maybe sometimes what she says kind of ruffles some feathers. So there's another nurse influencer who's out there and said, well, she works for a lot of the corporations, the very entities that this other nurse influencer is calling out. And she's like, well, you're the problem because you're bringing all this negativity to it. And I'm going to say this because it'll be coming out in my article soon, but I'm going to say this. Both of you are saying the same thing. You're just doing it in a different way. And it occurred to me that part of the reason why we're in such a mess like this, where you've got, yes, they're portraying this thing of the angry nurse. Well, nurses have a right to be angry. Okay, nurses have a right to be angry right now. I totally agree with that. You have a right to be angry. But here's the thing. Your anger has to be toward a way that provides a solution. And so if you're not looking for solutions, then you just got a bunch of angry people. And so this is why I wanted to have the challenge, is because I want to change the narrative. Yes, I agree. There's things that we as nurses, we need to take to the streets for, and I'm in support of that. I'm in support of that wholeheartedly. If there's a battle we need to fight, let's mount up. But I also think that we need to have solutions. And that's where some of the problems are coming in, is that we're not seeing the solutions. So I think that, I am not going to be bashing other nurse influencers. You do you. We had one nurse influencer, he's done big things, have all these big events and things like that. Other people are seeing that, want to have those events. I agree. Have your events. I want to have events too. But my point is this: there's more than enough for all of us. And maybe that one person's ability to influence is different from your ability to influence. We don't have to fight each other. So I want us to come together in unity. That's part of what we're going to talk about in our upcoming Nurses for the Kingdom event. We're going to talk about introducing kingdom principles to the field of nursing, because I think that's something that we've been missing. I know we've been missing because I see it. I've been watching it on social media, and I've been all over on social media: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. I've been all over the social media, so I've seen it all. And I can tell you, I can see the negativity, the backbiting, the anger, the pitting one against the other. And I'm not about all that. So come to our event. I'll be posting it next week. We'll be getting ready for our Nurses for the Kingdom. We'll have 3 days where we'll talk about introducing kingdom principles into the profession of nursing. I am out to empower the field of nursing, change the face of nursing, bring us back to some of our old principles and the things that we stood for in the beginning. I want us to do what we need to do as nurses and to enjoy our profession again. So I encourage you to do that. I'm going to put in our very last video, and just invite you to join us at the Nurse Shark Academy. I'll be so glad to have you. Nurses, are you ready for more? My mission is for you to own your seat at the table of nurse entrepreneurship, gaining confidence, skills, and the freedom to live your life on your own terms. Assisting you in achieving your goals through tailored advice, continuous learning, and a collaborative approach is at the heart of everything I do. Stop being eaten alive. Come feel the sun. Be a nurse shark. And that is my point. Let's stop being eaten alive and stop eating each other. Nurses shouldn't be eating their young. We should be feeding our young. And I want to see that positivity infused back into our profession again, because that is how you're going to make real change. All right, so thank you for tuning in this week. I will see you next week. Have a great rest of your week. Oh, for those of you that don't know, here in Indiana, in Anderson, we do have the play that's going on this weekend. So if you haven't got a ticket, get a ticket, head over to Eventbrite. It's showing at the Anderson City Auditorium. The Black nurses will be there on the 27th. So do that, and we're heading over to another event after that. And then also the Black Chamber is having their corporate luncheon next week. So I mean this week tomorrow. So if you got your tickets, don't forget to show up for the corporate luncheon. All right, that's it for now, and I'll see you next week.